The order book is at a record high since several years at 18.1 million. That's a 38% increase. And by driving that order book, of course, we now get that scale that will also drive further profitability. So this is really the focus definitely for the remainder of the year.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Bram Goorden. He's the CEO of IXICO. Bram, very good to speak with you. You're after your first half trading update this morning. Can you start by telling us what's driving growth?
Sure, Stephen, and thanks for having me. Always glad to be here. Obviously, this is an exciting time for us. We just announced what I think is a very strong first half. It's really continuation of a trend reversal in 25, which ended on a high as well, especially thanks to great growth at the second half of 25. And so you see a continuation now in 26. 23% revenue increase, I think, is the headline here. The main drivers to your question are more contracts. That's, of course, always what drives revenue. And I'll come back to which contracts we have secured, because obviously there's a strategic focus there. Also, contract extensions, which, as I've mentioned before, for me is all about showing this extra value which we have for clients, existing clients, and how we continue to do more work with them. And then I think, interestingly, what we're starting to see now as well is more volume, more analytics. And what that shows, and I've said that before, is that we were operating, I would argue, in the past as a company which was subscale. We have a platform that can be scaled, that is ready for more scale. And so especially, for example, in March, we had a record high of revenue thanks to these analytics, because we see volumes increasing and the company being able to fully do that. So the type of contracts which we won, as I mentioned before, we're very much focusing on the Alzheimer space, on the Parkinson space, in addition, of course, to this rare CNS space, which is really our bread and butter, as I always like to call it. And so we've been landing especially more of these Alzheimer's trials as well, and you'll see more of that. Alzheimer's trials, which also are in other modality spaces. We have been further validating some of the blood-based biomarker products that are out there, which is something that we're very excited about. And then lastly, moving towards these later stages in the clinical trial space. And by that, I mean phase 2, phase 3, where obviously there's a lot of value for IXICO to be gained. And you saw us announce a big phase 3 trial win at the end of last year, and then more recently also an extension in phase 2. So I would argue that all these drivers that we set there in order to drive revenue have now indeed started to be unlocked, and that's what you see come in action.
Bram, in terms of the existing business model, what might we see over the next 6 months in terms of focus?
Yeah, I sort of jokingly always like to say more of the same. And I think that is also what is expected and what shareholders, investors are expecting. But it's true, right? I mentioned that we were operating in the past subscale. So it's all about scaling up now, making sure that we have the revenues that also drive a better margin. And that, again, is something that you've seen as well. We've brought our margin to 53%. That's 4% points better than the same period last year. We're going to continue to drive that, because that will also bring us then to profitability. In terms of EBITDA, we were just shy of negative 500,000 for this half. And so clearly there as well, you see that we're now getting much closer to profitability. And the way we're doing that is by further filling our order book. The order book is at a record high since several years at 18.1 million. That's a 38% increase. And by driving that order book, of course, we now get that scale that will also drive further profitability. So this is really the focus definitely for the remainder of the year.
What are your key priorities as you start to implement the new TechBio strategy highlighted in your recent fundraising?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So we're changing register a little bit, if you wish. Indeed, we announced a 10 million raise, which is big for the size of the company that we are. I'm delighted to see current and new shareholders showing support in this capital raise. And so this is really going to unlock a whole new set of revenue drivers, but especially also value drivers. So we've been very busy, as we just discussed this first half, with our existing business. We'll continue to make sure that this goes in the right direction. We've always promised at least 15% growth. So I think with 23% this half, we're clearly exceeding that. But then with this raise, we're now going to start to do different things with our platform. And the way I like to phrase it is that the platform is going to start to live in the hands of other users, other players in this clinical trial space than only the IXICO experts. What I mean by that is we're going to partner the platform, and we're going to also derive revenue in a different fashion there. It's going to be recurring revenue because we believe that the platform can be licensed, can start to be partnered. In order to do that, we need to standardize, automate a platform so that we can integrate it with these partners. That requires investments that we will now be able to do that. And the way for me to bring this out and also really prove it was by actually signing one partnership that really brings it to life. And so I was delighted that a few weeks ago we could announce this Medidata collaboration, which I think is sort of the poster child of what we're trying to achieve here. And just to bring to life what this means, Medidata is the biggest electronic data capturing provider in the clinical trial space. They're serving 18 of the 25 big pharma clients. They are serving 80% of all clinical research organizations. And so they're really dominant in this space. And so for them to come to us and want to partner with this precision analytics technology which we have, and for us then to utilize that power that they have in terms of reach and in terms of impact in the space, I think is sort of the best example of what we're going to try to bring to life. So stay tuned for that. I want to definitely talk about more details here, but I think for now we're going to celebrate the growth with our core business over the past 6 months.
Well, congratulations on those numbers, Bram. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Bram Goorden, CEO of IXICO.